Today's Bible study comes from Matthew chapter 13, verses 53 through 58, and it reads as follows. When Jesus had finished these parables, he moved on from there. Coming to his hometown, he began teaching the people in their synagogue, and they were amazed. Where did this man get this wisdom and these miraculous powers? They asked. Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary? And aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Aren't all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all these things? And they took offense at him. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home. And he did not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith. Amen. Now, I like this part of the Bible because this part of this chapter too, because it speaks to really our faulted seeing work being done, and especially at home, we are doubters. We doubt because we know a commonality with that person, but the Lord does great works. And it tells you, it starts off in verse 53, when Jesus had finished these parables, he moved on from there. So Jesus was done preaching out and about. So what did he do? He went home. He had been gone for a while. But you know what? He still was working. It says in the next part of 54, he began teaching the people in their synagogue, and they were amazed. But you should have been amazed. I mean, Jesus was out and about, and you were hearing words of his great miracles, his great deeds, his preaching, his love, his compassion, his kindness. And then he comes home. And home is probably Nazareth, where his parents were living at. And he gets there. And when he gets there, the people are astonished at what he does. And maybe it was because Jesus wasn't doing it all there, or maybe he lived in some kind of obscurity. But all this time, they knew of him. They knew him as a child. They knew him growing up. And it sounds like the people hadn't heard his doctrines themselves. And maybe they hadn't seen his miracles. Maybe Jesus wasn't performing there. But the ones that you think should know him the best, the people that are at home with him, just like your family when they're at home with you, the ones that should know you the best really don't know you at all. They are missing who you are and what you do. And I can say I've experienced that, but most of them are ignorant of who you are. When you've been gone, when you have changed, when you have grown, when you have been given something that maybe they didn't receive yet, or maybe they're not open to receive yet. So this leads me to think of why the people were so astonished. And then they went back to our common vernacular. Isn't that somebody? In verse 55, they said, is not this the carpenter's son? Because this is how we know this dude. He was over there, you know. Well, yeah, he was the carpenter's son. We knew that. But he was not only the carpenter's son. Aren't you your mother and father's child? Yes, you are. But you are not only your mother and father's child. You are a child of God. You have a job. You are a parent yourself. So they knew him as just the carpenter's son. But during his 30 years, while he was in Nazareth, he did do what his dad did. And maybe that's all they were getting out of it. He went down with them to Nazareth and was subject unto them. He was faithful and loyal to his parents, as we all are. And he was working. Wow, Jesus was working. Can you believe it? He was getting his work on. And the people just saw him as that. And if you look at Luke 2:51, it even says it. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth, and then he continued in subjection to them. And his mother treasured all these things in her heart. Jesus loved his parents. Nothing wrong with that. But there was more to Jesus than just Mary and Joseph and his brothers and sisters. Is not his mother Mary and his brethren James, etc.? We're putting a stipulation on him because he's not only. And this is somewhat of an insult. You know, if you went away and you were doing your job, but you were faithful to your parents, you're not only your parents' child and your brother and sister's brother. There is more to you. The Lord has more in store for you. And it seems to only give reference to his earthly family because they didn't know him. And don't think that, I hate to say it, that Mary and Joseph were wealthy. So Jesus didn't hold a high status in the community. His father was not a wealthy man, and Jesus was not a wealthy man. So they were a small repute among their neighbors, except for their faith, their belief. And when you say his brother and sisters, I don't think it just meant his physical brothers and sisters, and I could be wrong, but I also think it means his relations. And, you know, it gives him some wiggle room for his relatives. So there was some prejudice that I could see it forming here because they said who his family was, and they weren't high. They weren't wealthy. And what could he be doing special? Because he is just a carpenter's son, and that's Mary's boy, and they don't make a lot of money. So I'm looking down at them. And then it kind of tells you in verse 57 that it's true because it says, and they were offended in him. Ooh, excuse me. They took offense at Jesus. And they were doing it, one, because of his family. And they couldn't receive him as a prophet. But, man, he was blowing them up. He was teaching them and astonishing them with wisdom, but they couldn't accept him as a prophet. You can see that today. You can see that today. I can tell you about it. Because they only saw him as what they knew him as and what they, quote unquote, labeled him and his family as. They couldn't understand even his miracles, all the miracles he did and the wisdom that he showed out to them. And it tells you, once again, if we go back to 54, it says he came to his hometown and began teaching them in their synagogue so that they were astonished and said, where did this man get this wisdom and these miraculous powers? Well, you just admitted that he had wisdom and miraculous powers, so how come you couldn't see him for more than what you thought you saw him for? You labeled him because of his family, because of his status, but you didn't label him because of his deeds. We do that in the real world, so don't be shocked that they did this. We do that today. So their pride and their envy were the causes of these people's destruction. And then it says a prophet is not without honor. Woo! The apparent problem with this, or the meaning and meanness of this, is Our Lord was one pretense why they rejected him, and yet he was God manifested in the flesh. He humbled himself. He came down here to be a servant. He went to the cross. He is why we have salvation. And remember, he came at the time to save the world, not Jews, not Gentiles, but everybody, the world. And he even says that. He came to save a lost world. He was being criticized by those who could not see past themselves. Yeah, he was teaching wisdom. Yes, he was doing miracles, but he ain't going to do it better than me because he was just that carpenter's boy. He was just Mary's boy. And I know his brothers and sisters. So he can't have all this. Although I see it and hear it. But his word was more reputed in his hometown. In my hometown, it was more reputed. But the funny thing is, he lets them know it was better received out there. I am from where you are. And the only thing you can see is my family, our status, and your prejudices. But you can't see the work that I am doing. I am exactly who I said I am. I have been on a journey. I have been preaching and performing miracles. I have been saving people. And I am the one that goes to the cross to die for you. But even among his relatives, God knows, thank you, Lord, even among his own relatives, because they knew him, and he didn't come in this world wealthy and all this, he was obscure from birth. They couldn't believe he could get things from heaven. God blesses who he blesses. We have to know that. So in 58, look what happened. It says, and he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. Ooh, that faith. That faith. They didn't have faith. They were unbelieving and contempt towards Christ. And they were also trying to drive Christ out of their heart, out of the heart, as they did out of the country when he left. Faith is what puts you into play with the Lord. Faith is what puts the power of God in man's hands. Unbelief takes everything away. If you doubt, there is no power. There's no power in doubt. You never hear, you never read in the Bible that power came with doubt. Power comes with believing, having faith. It is hard to do things with your relatives because they say they know you and they've been with you as you grew up, but they don't know you. The Lord can make a change in your life and your family don't understand it. They don't want to accept it. And people that knew you that think that you didn't come from a good family, they won't see the change because they already have a prejudice from long ago. I myself have been guilty of this at times, and I myself have received this at times. So it happens, and we have to ask the Lord for some understanding. We have to ask the Lord to give us some discernment also, because God has worked great things with people who were not exceptional, who were not extraordinary, who had their own problems. And to think that because you know Jesus and you saw him grow up and his family wasn't wealthy, that he couldn't preach the good word, that he couldn't tell you and show you miracles, that his word wasn't strong with wisdom, and you see it and you hear it and you still doubt because of your prejudice. That's what happens when we behold things with just our eyes and our fleshly nature. So open up your eyes and your heart to understanding that the Lord puts people there and does things through faithful people. But the real thing is, they shouldn't have been prejudiced towards him anyway. He was showing them things of the Lord. He was not showing them things of the devil. It wasn't like them saying the devil is casting out the devil. It was never that. As we talked about weeks back, this was about his family and relatives and people in his area not seeing nor believing who Christ truly is. Amen.